You want to know how I managed to blow up my entire marriage over some stupid photos? I'm still trying to figure that out myself. I'm Brittany, 29, and my life is currently falling apart over a box I should have thrown out years ago. It started last month when Grant and I were packing up our apartment for the move to our new place. We'd been married for 5 years, and things were, well, they were fine, I guess. Grant was always the stable one, reliable, predictable, safe. He was sorting through our closet when I heard him go quiet. That weird kind of quiet that makes your stomach drop. What's this? He was holding this old shoebox I'd kept pushed to the back of my closet. I recognized it immediately and felt my face get hot. It was my Julian box, full of photos, letters, and little gifts from my college boyfriend. My first real love. "Oh, that's just some old stuff from college," I said, trying to sound casual while mentally kicking myself for not hiding it better. Grant opened it before I could stop him, and his face just changed. He pulled out a stack of photos, some of them showing a little more of Julian and me than my husband needed to see. Photos I specifically promised Grant I'd destroyed before our wedding. "You told me you got rid of all this," he said quietly, flipping through concert tickets, birthday cards, and this little silver necklace Julian had given me our first anniversary. I could see Grant's shoulders tensing up as he found the handwritten letters. "It's not a big deal," I said, grabbing for the box. "It's just memories. It doesn't mean anything." But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't entirely true. Why else would I have kept that stuff hidden for years? Grant looked at me like I'd slapped him. "If it doesn't mean anything, why did you keep it? And why did you lie about getting rid of it?" I felt cornered and got defensive. "You're being way too sensitive about this. It's literally just some old photos and stuff. It's part of my history. What, am I supposed to pretend Julian never existed?" That's when Grant got really quiet and just shook his head. "No, but I thought I was your present and future, not some guy you dated in college." I rolled my eyes, annoyed that he was making such a big deal about this when we had an entire apartment to pack. "Don't be so dramatic. It's not like I'm still talking to him or something." Another lie. I'd been following Julian on my secret Instagram account for years. Not that Grant needed to know that. We spent the rest of the day packing in tense silence. I kept waiting for Grant to get over it, but he barely spoke to me at dinner. He didn't even look at me. When bedtime came around, he grabbed a pillow and said he'd sleep on the couch. "Seriously?" I asked, getting irritated. "You're this upset over some old mementos?" "It's not about the photos, Brittany. It's that you kept them and lied about it. What else aren't you telling me?" If he only knew. I went to bed alone that night, annoyed that Grant was being so insecure. In the darkness, I found myself thinking about Julian for the first time in a while. I wondered what he was up to these days. Last I checked, he was going through a divorce and had moved back to our city. Not that I was keeping tabs on him or anything. The next morning, Grant was already up and packing when I woke up. His eyes were rimmed with red like he hadn't slept much. I tried to act normal, making coffee and chatting about the move, but he just gave me one-word answers. "Are we really going to let this stupid box ruin our move?" I finally asked. Grant looked at me for a long moment. "Do you ever think about him?" he asked quietly. "No," I lied. "That was years ago. I don't know why you're making such a big deal out of this." "Then why keep it all?" He wasn't letting this go. "I don't know, Grant. Because it's mine? Because I'm allowed to have keepsakes? Why do you still have your high school football trophies?" I was getting frustrated now. "That's not the same thing, and you know it," he said, closing up a box of books with more force than necessary. I just walked away. He was being ridiculous, and I didn't have time for this. We had a million things to do before the move. As I headed to the bedroom to pack more clothes, I grabbed my phone and, without thinking, opened my secret Instagram account. Julian had posted a new photo at some trendy downtown restaurant. He looked good, really good. I caught myself smiling at the screen and quickly closed the app when I heard Grant coming down the hall. I'd be lying if I said I never thought about Julian. He was my everything in college, 3 years of intense, passionate love that I thought would last forever. We met sophomore year at a campus party, and it was that instant, movie-type connection. Julian was charismatic, creative, and had these plans to conquer the world with his talent. Everyone wanted to be around him, but he chose me. I never felt for Grant what I felt for Julian. That sounds terrible, I know, but it's true. Julian and I broke up when he got that amazing job offer across the country. He asked me to come with him, but I'd just lined up my first real job and wasn't about to give that up. We said we'd try long distance, but I ended things after 3 months. It was too hard. I met Grant a year later at work. He was steady, reliable, and genuinely nice to me. After the emotional roller coaster with Julian, Grant's predictability was comforting. We moved in together after 8 months and got engaged a year after that. Fast, but it felt right at the time. I never fully deleted Julian from my life, though. I told Grant I did, but I kept tabs on him through a separate Instagram account he didn't know about. Julian was doing really well for himself. His career had taken off, and based on his posts, he was making serious money now. Way more than Grant, who'd been stuck at the same position for years. Grant had been acting weird lately, even before finding the box. More withdrawn, quieter. Sometimes I'd catch him just staring at nothing, and he'd started taking these long walks alone. He called it clearing his head, but I found some antidepressant pills in his gym bag last week. I never mentioned them to him. What was I supposed to say? It was easier to just pretend I hadn't seen them. That night, I did something I'd been thinking about for months. I sent Julian a message. Just a casual, "Hey stranger, saw you're back in town" kind of thing. No big deal, right? Wrong. Because Julian responded immediately, and just seeing his name pop up on my screen made my stomach flip in a way Grant had never managed. Brittany Taylor. Thought you fell off the face of the earth? Married life keeping you locked down? You're out. I smiled at my screen. Something like that. How've you been? We messaged back and forth for hours. I told him about the move, but conveniently left out any mention of how happy I was with Grant. Julian told me about his divorce, how his ex didn't understand his ambition, how she tried to change him. I remembered thinking Grant had tried to change me too, making little comments about my spending habits or how much I posted on social media. By the time I realized how late it was, Grant was already asleep on the couch again. Julian had suggested meeting for coffee to catch up properly. I replied with, "I'd love that," before putting my phone away, feeling excited in a way I hadn't in years. The coffee meetup with Julian was supposed to be quick and casual, just old friends catching up. I told Grant I was meeting my coworker Ashley for lunch. The lie came so easily, I surprised myself. I spent an hour getting ready, changing outfits 3 times before settling on a dress I hadn't worn in ages. One Julian had always liked on me in college. I even dug out the little silver necklace he'd given me, the one from the memory box. The moment I saw Julian waiting at the cafe, my heart did a stupid little flip. He looked even better in person than in his photos, confident, successful, with this energy Grant had never possessed. He hugged me a little too long, and I let him. "There she is," he said, looking me up and down with a smile that made me feel 20 again. "Marriage looks good on you, Britt." We fell into conversation like no time had passed. Julian talked about his company, his travels, his new condo downtown. I found myself downplaying my life with Grant, making vague comments about work and the move, avoiding mention of my husband when possible. "So be honest," Julian said, leaning in close. "Are you happy? Like, really happy?" I hesitated just long enough for him to notice. "Of course," I said, not meeting his eyes. Julian reached across the table and touched my hand. "You never were a good liar, Brittany." Our coffee stretched into 3 hours. By the end, we'd made plans to meet again the following week. As I was leaving, Julian said something that stuck with me. "You know what I always called your husband in my head? The incel who got lucky." He laughed like it was an inside joke we'd been sharing for years. I should have defended Grant. Instead, I laughed too. When I got home, Grant was waiting with takeout and a peace offering. He'd found a framed photo of us from our honeymoon to hang in the new place. The gesture should have touched me. Instead, I felt irritated, like he was trying too hard. "How was lunch with Ashley?" he asked. "Fine," I said, heading to the bathroom to wash Julian's cologne off my skin. Our move-in date was approaching fast, but I found myself creating excuses to meet Julian again and again. Coffee turned into lunch, lunch turned into drinks after work. Each time I lied to Grant about where I was going and who I was with. Grant was trying so hard to fix things between us. He suggested couples therapy, planned date nights, started cooking my favorite meals. But I was already slipping away from him, already imagining a different life. Julian and I kept our meetups casual at first, but there was always this undercurrent of something more. He'd touch my arm when laughing, text me late at night asking what I was wearing. I knew where this was heading, and I wasn't stopping it. Things with Grant were tense but tolerable as we finally moved into the new townhouse. I'd saved Julian's number under Ashley Work in my contacts, but Grant seemed suspicious anyway. "You've been texting Ashley a lot lately," he said carefully. "We're working on a big project together." I lied, password protecting my phone the moment he left the room. Julian and I were meeting almost every other day by this point. I'd tell Grant I was working late or meeting girlfriends, and he'd just nod, this defeated look in his eyes that made me feel momentarily guilty before I pushed the feeling away. One night, after particularly strong cocktails, Julian and I crossed the line I'd been inching toward for weeks. His downtown condo was everything our new townhouse wasn't: sleek, modern, impressive. He kissed me as soon as the door closed behind us, and I didn't stop him. I didn't even think about Grant until much later, when I was getting dressed to go home. "You're not happy with him," Julian said, watching me from the bed. "You never were. You settled, Brittany." His words stung because they contained the truth I'd been avoiding. I got home late that night, expecting Grant to be asleep. Instead, he was sitting in the dark living room, waiting. Something about his posture sent alarm bells ringing in my head. "Work thing run late?" he asked, his voice flat. "Yeah, sorry, should have texted." I kept my distance, afraid he'd smell Julian's cologne on me despite my quick stop at a gas station bathroom to freshen up. "Funny, because I dropped by your office around 6 to surprise you with dinner. They said you'd left early today." My stomach dropped. "I met Ashley after." "Stop lying to me." Grant's voice cracked with emotion. "I saw you, Brittany. I saw you with him at Riverfront Bar. I saw how he touched you, how you looked at him." I froze, panic rising in my chest. "You followed me?" "I didn't have to follow you. I was meeting my brother for a drink when I saw you two walk in together." Grant's eyes were red-rimmed, his hands shaking slightly. "How long has this been going on?" Instead of apologizing or even acknowledging what I'd done, I went on the offensive. "This wouldn't have happened if you hadn't made such a big deal about those stupid photos. You pushed me away, Grant. You made me feel guilty for having a past." "A past?" Grant stood up, his voice rising. "This isn't about your past. It's about right now. It's about you lying to my face every day." What was I supposed to do? "You've been so depressed lately, so clingy and insecure." Because I knew something was wrong. He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "I knew you were pulling away. I just didn't want to believe you were cheating on me." I flinched at the word cheating. It made what I'd done sound so ugly. "It's not like that," I insisted. "Julian and I are just reconnecting as friends." Grant laughed bitterly. "Friends don't look at each other the way you two were looking at each other." He pulled out his phone and showed me his secret weapon, a photo of Julian and me entering his apartment building together earlier that night. "You've been spying on me?" I gasped, trying to grab his phone. "My brother took it. He recognized Julian from our wedding photos when you pointed him out as your college friend." Grant's voice was filled with quiet rage. "Were you ever going to tell me, or just keep lying indefinitely?" I felt cornered. "You're overreacting. We're just what, Brittany? Just sleeping together? Just destroying our marriage?" I had no defense, so I attacked instead. "Maybe if you were more exciting, more ambitious, more like Julian?" Grant finished for me. "That's what this has always been about, hasn't it? You never got over him." The truth hung between us like a physical thing. I couldn't deny it anymore, not with the evidence literally in his hands. "I think I'm pregnant," I blurted out, the lie forming spontaneously in my desperation. Grant's face went completely blank. For a moment, I thought my Hail Mary had worked. Then he looked at me with such sadness it took my breath away. "We haven't slept together in over 3 months, Brittany." The week after Grant discovered my affair was surreal. He moved his things into the spare bedroom and barely spoke to me. I kept waiting for him to yell, to demand a divorce, to do something, but he just existed alongside me in painful silence. Julian was less enthusiastic about meeting up now that my marriage was imploding. Maybe we should cool things for a bit, he suggested when I called him crying after another silent dinner with Grant. Just until you figure things out at home. I felt like I was losing everything at once. Grant was slipping away, and Julian was showing his true colors. He'd loved the chase, the forbidden nature of our reconnection, but actual commitment? That wasn't what he wanted. One evening, Grant finally broke his silence. I need some space to think, he said, packing a small bag. I'm going to stay with my brother for a few days. You're leaving me? I asked, suddenly terrified of being alone with my choices. I'm taking space. He corrected. To decide if there's anything left to save here. While he was gone, I tried desperately to reach Julian, but he was suddenly busy with work, with life, with everything but me. I drove by his condo one night and saw him helping a woman out of his car. Attractive, laughing, touching his arm the way I had just days before. When Grant returned a week later, he looked different, calmer, more resolved. He sat me down at our kitchen table, his eyes clear and focused in a way I hadn't seen in months. I've made a decision, he said quietly. Either you cut all contact with Julian, delete your secret social media accounts. Yes, I know about those too. And we go to marriage counseling, or I'm done. I felt a flash of indignation. You're giving me an ultimatum? After all your talk about space and thinking things through, you're just going to dictate terms to me? These aren't terms, Brittany. These are boundaries. I can't stay in a marriage with someone who doesn't respect me enough to be faithful or honest. You're being controlling, I accused. This whole thing started because you couldn't handle that. I kept a few mementos. This isn't about the photos. Grant's composure cracked briefly. This is about you actively cheating on me and then lying about it to my face. This is about you pretending to be pregnant to manipulate me. I think I could be pregnant, I insisted, doubling down on the lie. Grant just looked at me sadly. If you are, is it even mine? The question hit me like a slap. I hadn't actually considered that my lie might backfire this spectacularly. Of course it would be yours, I said, my voice small. Brittany, we both know that's not true. Grant stood up and walked to the living room, where he started gathering his things. I've already talked to a lawyer. I'll be staying with my brother until I find a place of my own. The reality of what was happening suddenly hit me. Grant was actually leaving. My stable, secure life was falling apart, and Julian wasn't stepping up to catch me. Wait, I said, panic rising. We can work this out. I'll stop talking to Julian. I'll go to counseling. Whatever you want. Grant paused, a framed photo of us in his hands. That's the problem, Brittany. You're only saying that because you're scared of being alone, not because you actually love me or want our marriage to work. That's not true, I protested, but we both heard the hollowness in my voice. I deserve better than being someone's backup plan, Grant said, placing the photo face down on the table. And honestly, so do you. I watched in shock as he methodically packed his essentials. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Grant was the stable one, the one who always forgave me, the one who stuck around no matter what. You can't just throw away 5 years of marriage, I said, following him from room to room. I'm not the one who threw it away, Brittany. You did that when you started seeing Julian behind my back. Within an hour, Grant had packed his car with suitcases and boxes. He handed me a business card for his lawyer and looked around our townhouse one last time. I really did love you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I hope you figure out what you actually want. And then he was gone. The reality of being alone hit me hard that first night. I called Julian repeatedly, but he'd stopped answering. I even drove to his condo, but the doorman wouldn't let me up. Mr. Reeves asked not to be disturbed, he said with a look that told me I wasn't the first woman he'd turned away. I spent the next few days in a daze, ignoring calls from work, scrolling through old photos of Grant and me, wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. My lies about being pregnant were revealed when my period arrived, crushing any lingering hope that Grant might come back out of obligation. When I finally reached Julian, his response was devastating in its casualness. Look, what we had was fun, Brittany, but I'm not looking for anything serious right now, especially not with someone who's going through a divorce. But you said, I started. I didn't say anything about us being together long term, he cut me off. It was good to reconnect, but maybe we should take a step back now that your situation has changed. I was stunned. You pursued me. You pulled me away from my marriage. Julian laughed. Come on, Britt. You were looking for an escape hatch from that marriage long before I came back to town. I just happened to be convenient. After he hung up, I sat in our half-empty townhouse surrounded by moving boxes we'd never fully unpacked, and finally let myself cry. Not just for losing Grant, but for the realization that I'd thrown away something real for a fantasy that never existed. I found the box of Julian mementos that had started everything and forced myself to really look at them. The photos, the letters, the gifts. They weren't treasures. They were anchors, keeping me tied to a past that had prevented me from fully committing to my present. Grant's lawyer called to discuss division of assets. I learned Grant had been documenting my affair for weeks, building a case with timestamps of my lies, photos of me with Julian, even screenshots of conversations with mutual friends where I disparaged Grant while idealizing Julian. I tried reaching out to Grant directly, hoping for a second chance now that Julian had revealed his true nature. His response was a single text: "Please direct all communication through our lawyers." Sitting alone in what was supposed to be our fresh start, I tried to make sense of how everything had gone so wrong. It would be easy to blame Julian for seducing me or Grant for overreacting about the photos. But in my more honest moments, I knew the truth. I had never fully committed to Grant because I'd always kept one foot in the past, always wondering what if instead of investing in what is. I'd kept those photos and mementos not as innocent keepsakes, but as lifelines to a relationship I'd idealized beyond reality. But even with this realization, I couldn't bring myself to take full responsibility. Instead, I comforted myself with the thought that Grant and I were probably incompatible anyway, that Julian had just exposed cracks that were already there, that the photos were just a convenient catalyst for an inevitable end. As I boxed up the mementos to finally throw them away, I wondered if I'd ever learn to live in the present instead of chasing ghosts from my past. Probably not, if I'm being honest. But that's a problem for future Brittany to figure out.